My brother stalked and assaulted my girlfriend at a wedding. My parents defended him. He's now in jail for domestic violence. The second Victoria, 25. My girlfriend walked in. Samuel instantly started behaving inappropriately, making her deeply uncomfortable with his completely inappropriate actions. He practically pushed our mom aside to hug Victoria first, holding her for way too long until she had to physically back away. At dinner he kept making excuses to touch her arm or shoulder, telling these fake inside jokes that made no sense since they'd just met, and literally pushed me aside multiple times to sit next to her until he completely crossed the line by trying to feed her with his fork while looking intensely into her eyes. Victoria was clearly out of her element but continued to be polite since it was our first family gathering and she wanted to make a good impression. The entire evening Samuel kept bringing up embarrassing stories about me from childhood, twisting them to make me look pathetic like a fool. He told this completely made-up story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my supposed emotional abuse that never happened. Victoria knew these stories weren't true because I'd told her about my teenage years before, but my parents just sat there nodding as if Samuel was telling the absolute truth. Things got even worse after dinner. Victoria offered to help with the cleaning, trying to be helpful. I was helping my dad move some boxes in the garage when I realized I hadn't seen Victoria in a while. I found her in the kitchen with Samuel literally blocking her path to the door. He had her cornered at the sink and was telling her that she deserved someone more exciting than his boring, unstable older brother. He was standing way too close and had his hand on the counter next to her hip. Victoria had already asked him to back off twice when I walked in. She looked relieved when she saw me and immediately came over to me. Samuel just waved me off as if it was all a big joke, but I could feel Victoria shaking. My girlfriend Victoria and I had been together for 8 months and everything was absolutely fine until Samuel decided to completely ruin our lives with his obsessive behavior. I think I need to give some context about our family dynamics for this to make sense. Samuel and I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town in Minnesota. Our parents both work in real estate and make good money, but they were always more concerned with keeping up appearances than actual family relationships. Samuel was born when I was 3 and from the moment he arrived he was the center of our parents' universe. Nothing he did was ever wrong and somehow everything was always my fault. Growing up Samuel exhibited some really disturbing behavior that my parents completely ignored. When he was 6 he intentionally broke my gaming console because I wouldn't let him play when he wanted. Instead of punishing him my parents bought him his own and told me I should have shared better. When he was 12 he killed my pet hamster by giving it chocolate knowing it was toxic, but my parents said it was an accident and that I shouldn't have pets if I wasn't going to supervise them properly. In high school he spread rumors that I was cheating on my girlfriend at the time, which led to us breaking up. My parents said he was just protecting her. This pattern has continued into adulthood. Samuel still lives at home with our parents, working in my dad's real estate office and basically doing whatever he wants. He has sabotaged every relationship I have tried to have with my last girlfriend before Victoria. He convinced her family that I had a gaming addiction. Completely false. Before that he told another girl that I was cheating to all my previous girlfriends, also false. Each time my parents either defended his actions or accused me of exaggerating. When I met Victoria I decided to do things differently. I kept our relationship a complete secret from my family for the first 3 months because I wanted to protect her from Samuel's usual tricks. Victoria is honestly the best thing that ever happened to me. She is brilliant, compassionate and works as a pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met in the hospital cafe where I was having coffee while visiting a colleague who had surgery. She was on her lunch break and we started talking about the terrible hospital coffee. After a few coffee dates we started dating and everything just felt right. Victoria knows my entire family history because I wanted her to be prepared. In fact, she encouraged me to try and introduce her to them by saying that maybe things would change now that we were all adults. She always tries to see the best in people, which is one of the things I love about her. I finally agreed to introduce Victoria to her family for dinner last month, and that's when things started to go downhill. The real problem started a few days after the dinner. Victoria started getting weird calls and texts from unfamiliar numbers. At first it was just heavy breathing or immediate disconnection when she answered. Then they started leaving increasingly creepy voicemails calling her stuck up and cold for turning down a better option. Some of the messages included specific details about her work schedule and clothes, which proved someone was watching her. Victoria didn't connect the dots at first, but I recognized some of the voices from Samuel's old friends from high school. This group of guys who still hang out with him and do whatever he says because his parents give him money to spend. When Victoria blocked these numbers, they just started calling with new ones. Then Samuel's friends started showing up at the hospital. pretending to be visitors but just hanging out in the pediatric ward where Victoria works. They would stare at her for hours, making comments loud enough for her to hear. Last week one of them followed her to her car after her night shift. She got so scared she called me crying from her car, afraid to drive home, worried she was being followed. I had to pick her up and drive her car home while my friend drove behind me to make sure we weren't being followed. Victoria started having panic attacks before shifts and her coworkers noticed something was wrong yesterday. I finally had enough evidence to confront Samuel directly. I had voicemail recording, screenshots of messages, and CCTV footage from the hospital showing his friend stalking Victoria. I went to our parents' house where Samuel still lives and showed him everything. He just sat there looking smug, smirking as I spoke, then looked me straight in the eye and said he had no idea what I was talking about, but maybe if Victoria wasn't so stuck up, people wouldn't feel the need to teach her a lesson. Something broke in me when he said that, and I punched him in the face. Samuel immediately howled like I was trying to kill him, even though it was barely a bloody nose. Our parents came running and of course they completely freaked out at me, not Samuel. They didn't even look at the evidence I was trying to show them. Mom was hysterical about her boy being attacked and Dad was screaming about how I'd always been jealous of Samuel and needed professional help for my anger issues. When I tried to explain the stalking, Mom actually said Victoria must have egged Samuel on at dinner and was now playing the victim because she got caught flirting with him. Dad told me to get out of his house and not coming back until I apologized to Samuel and get myself together. I'm writing this from Victoria's apartment where I've been since last night. She finally fell asleep in the other room after crying for hours because she's dreading going to work tomorrow. Her boss has been understanding so far, but Victoria is worried she'll lose her job if this continues to escalate. She loves working with kids in the pediatric ward and shouldn't have to give that up because of my psychotic brother. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every time I think Samuel can't get any lower, he proves otherwise. Our parents are completely condoning his behavior and brainwashing me and Victoria about what's going on. The police won't do anything without more solid evidence linking Samuel directly to the stalking. Victoria is living in fear, her job is on the line, and my family is acting like we're the ones causing the problems. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? How do I protect Victoria? Dealing with my toxic family. Should I do more to document everything that is going on? Any help would be appreciated because I am at my limit here. Update: first of all, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading all of your responses has helped me realize how serious the situation is, Victoria, and I have been trying to follow the advice many of you have given about documenting everything and taking legal action. Unfortunately, things have only gotten worse over the last 2 weeks and I need to speak out about what is going on. We have followed the advice to go to the police, Victoria, and I have spent hours gathering evidence, screenshots of all the threatening messages, voicemail recordings, and CCTV footage from the hospital showing Samuel's friends lurking around. We also had written statements from 3 of Victoria's co-workers who witnessed the harassment. The police officer we spoke to seemed concerned at first, especially about harassment in the workplace, but then things got more complicated. It turned out Samuel's best friend Tyler, one of the main players in Victoria's harassment, is the son of a local police sergeant. When we mentioned Tyler's name, the officer's attitude completely changed. He started saying that without direct evidence that Samuel was orchestrating everything, there was little they could do. He suggested that perhaps Victoria had misinterpreted the friendly attention from some guys who were just hanging out at the hospital for legitimate reasons. He even had the nerve to ask if Victoria could have provoked the attention in some way. We asked to speak to another officer, preferably a female one, but they brushed us off. They eventually said they would issue warnings to the people we could identify from the CCTV footage, but that was the most they could do without concrete evidence of actual threats. It seemed like a complete waste of time. My parents' reaction was even worse than I expected. The day after we went to the police, Samuel showed up at their house with a black eye, claiming I had attacked him again. I didn't even seen him since the night I hit him 2 weeks ago, but of course my parents believed him immediately. My mom called me crying hysterically about how out of control I was trying to ruin Samuel's life. She said calling the police proved I was intentionally trying to ruin his future over a stupid misunderstanding. Then my dad called. He was furious. He threatened to cut off my financial support, which would have been scary if I was still dependent on them. Luckily, I have a good job in software development and my own apartment. He also threatened to fire me from the family real estate agency, forgetting I never actually worked there. It's Samuel's job. It really showed how they don't even see me as a separate person, but just an extension of Samuel's life. The real disaster happened last weekend. My mom kept calling and texting saying they wanted to make things right as a family. She promised Samuel was sorry for everything and wanted to apologize to me and Victoria. She said they had a talk with him about boundaries and he realized he had been inappropriate. After discussing it with Victoria, we decided to give them one chance to make things right. It was a huge mistake. We showed up at my parents' house for what was supposed to be a family reconciliation dinner. As soon as we walked in, I knew something was wrong. The house was full of people: my parents, Samuel, Our aunt and uncle who always side with Samuel, and most importantly Tyler and the other two guys who had been harassing Victoria at work. My mom called it a family intervention. For 2 hours they all took turns attacking Victoria's character while Samuel sat with smugly looking. My mom went on at length about how Victoria was obviously jealous of Samuel's attractiveness and success, and flirted with him at their first dinner. She said Victoria was making up the stalking because she felt guilty about egging Samuel on and was trying to cover her tracks. My aunt suggested that Victoria was probably used to getting attention from guys at work and misinterpreted friendly behavior as stalking because she felt guilty. Samuel played his part perfectly, looking sad and confused about why Victoria was telling such horrible lies about him. He kept saying things like how he was looking forward to having a daughter-in-law and how upset he was that she was trying to turn me against him. Tyler and his friends backed him up, swearing they were only going to the hospital because they were visiting Tyler's sick grandmother, who turns out to be moving between different floors and apartments every day. The worst part was when they started questioning Victoria's mental state. They mentioned that she sometimes worked night shifts, suggesting that maybe the lack of sleep was making her paranoid. They talked about how stressful it was to work with sick children, insinuating that maybe she was projecting her work stress onto innocent interactions with Samuel and his friends. My mom even had the nerve to recommend a therapist who could help Victoria sort out her tendency to create drama. Victoria tried to defend herself at first by calmly explaining the harassment and showing them the texts and voicemails again. But they interrupted her, dismissed her evidence as misunderstandings or assumed that she had somehow instigated everything. When Tyler started detailing what Victoria wore on certain days to work, proving that he was harassing her, my parents acted like it was proof that Victoria was trying to get attention. It all got too much when they invited Tyler and his friends to join us for dessert, saying they wanted to show us what good young men they really are. Victoria started getting short of breath and had to leave the room when I tried to go after her. My mom grabbed my arm and told me it was time for me to choose between my real family and a girlfriend who was clearly unstable and trying to cause trouble. I chose Victoria. We left immediately and I haven't spoken to my family since that night. Samuel's friends have become bolder in their harassment, now spreading rumors at Victoria's workplace about her mental instability and history of false accusations. Her manager called her into a meeting yesterday to discuss concerns about the work drama. Although he seemed sympathetic, he warned her that all this anxiety was starting to affect her performance and suggested she consider transferring to another department or hospital. We have hired a lawyer who is helping us get restraining orders, but it is a slow process. Victoria is looking into job openings at other hospitals and one of her former colleagues has offered to help her get a job at a hospital about 300 miles away. I hate that we are forced to consider such extreme measures, but I can't stand seeing Victoria constantly scared and stressed. She cries before every shift and has lost weight because she is too anxious to eat properly. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every attempt to deal with this sensibly has backfired on me. My family are completely delusional. The police are useless and Samuel seems to be winning. How to fight back when everyone is determined to believe the worst about you and the best about your abuser. Update 2. I wish I could post better news, but everything was completely shattered by what happened at my cousin Hollis' wedding last weekend. I've been trying to process everything for the last few days before writing this update. What was supposed to be a happy family occasion turned into a complete nightmare that ended with Samuel in handcuffs and our family was completely torn apart. First, some context. Holly had always been the only family member other than my grandfather who saw through Samuel's mask. When we were kids, she caught Samuel torturing her cat and told everyone. But my parents convinced the family she was lying for attention. She never forgot it and she stood by me steadfastly through the whole situation with Victoria. She even wrote a detailed statement for our lawyer about Samuel's history of disturbing behavior. When Holly sent us an invitation to the wedding, Victoria and I were hesitant, but Holly called us personally and promised that she had only invited Samuel because her parents insisted and that she had hired extra security specifically to watch him. She also seated us at the table with her husband's family, away from my parents and Samuel. We thought that with all the witnesses around and security, Samuel wouldn't try anything stupid. We were wrong. The ceremony went well, mostly because Samuel was busy being one of the best men. Holly's husband is our cousin on the other side of the family and didn't know about all the drama. At the reception, everything seemed fine at first. Samuel was sitting at the family table with our parents and we were across the room with Holly's in-laws. Victoria was finally starting to relax and enjoy herself for the first time in weeks. Around 9 p.m. Victoria went to the bathroom. She was gone for maybe 10 minutes when I noticed Samuel wasn't at his table anymore. Something didn't feel right, so I went to check on Victoria. As I was walking towards the bathrooms, I heard Victoria scream. I started running and then Ash's husband, Miller, and his brother turned the corner in front of me. They found Samuel pinning Victoria against the wall in the hallway near the bathrooms, trying to force himself on her. And while she struggled He kept one hand on her mouth and the other squeezed her arm tightly, leaving bruises. Miller and his brother pulled Samuel away from Victoria just as I approached. Victoria was shaking and crying, her dress was torn at the shoulder and there were visible bruises forming on her arms. Samuel was clearly drunk and started yelling about how Victoria had been teasing him all night, she literally wouldn't go near him, and how she followed him into the hallway, she was there first. Miller's brother, who is a cop in another town, immediately called the local police and Miller helped Victoria into a private room where Holly and her mom were trying to calm her down. This is where things got even worse, if that was possible. When the police arrived, my parents tried to stop them from arresting Samuel, my mother screaming that it was a misunderstanding, that Victoria must have provoked Samuel, that they shouldn't ruin his life over a little drunken mistake. My father actually tried to physically stop the officers from handcuffing Samuel, saying that they should treat it as a family matter. Samuel switched between crying about how Victoria had seduced him and threatening everyone, saying that none of us understood what he was capable of. He looked completely out of his mind. When he was finally being put into the police car, he started screaming that Victoria was a whore who had been asking for it since the first time they met. Several guests recorded the entire meltdown on their phones. The aftermath was brutal. My parents are furious, calling everyone in the family to spread their version of events. They say Victoria lured Samuel to a secluded place, propositioned him, then screamed assault when he rejected her. They say she staged the whole thing to get back at Samuel for exposing her lie about the harassment. They even claim Miller and his brother beat Samuel up before the police arrived, which they did not, and that Victoria inflicted the bruises on herself. The only positive development is that Holly's wedding video captured Samuel chasing Victoria into the bathroom on camera. Between that, the bruises, the multiple witnesses, and the video of Samuel's breakdown during his arrest, our attorney says we have a strong case. Several relatives who were at the wedding have come forward with statements about Samuel's behavior throughout the night, including his rude comments about Victoria and harassing her at the reception. My parents are now threatening to disown me unless Victoria drops the charges. They've been calling and texting constantly, alternating between grievances about breaking up the family and threats to ruin my inheritance. They even showed up at my apartment yesterday, causing such a scene that my neighbors called the police. My mom cried about sending her child to jail, while my dad threatened to make sure I never worked in the state again. Victoria and I have made a decision. She has accepted a job offer at a hospital 300 yards away and I have taken a remote position with my company. We are moving at the end of next month. A lot of people might think we are running, but we just need to get away from all this toxicity and start over somewhere else. Holly understands and has promised to keep us updated on any family developments we need to know about. The hardest part of all of this is knowing that my family will never admit that Samuel needs help, even after they saw him attack someone at a wedding in front of witnesses. They still protect him and blame the victim. I wonder if anything would have changed if someone had intervened when we were kids, but I guess we will never know. Right now I just have to focus on protecting Victoria and building our new life together away from Samuel and my parents' indulgent behavior. Update 3. I wasn't planning on posting another update, but something happened yesterday that I felt I needed to share. After 4 years of blessed silence from my family, I received a hysterical phone call from my mom that honestly left me feeling both gratified and deeply saddened. First, a quick update on where we are with Victoria and I. We got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony with Holly's family and Victoria's extended family. We bought a house in our new town, and Victoria is now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I still work remotely for the same company, but last year I got promoted to senior developer. We are expecting our first child, a girl, in 3 months. Life has been peaceful and happy, which makes what I am about to tell you even more disturbing. Yesterday afternoon, I was in a meeting when my phone started ringing off the hook with calls from my mom. I usually ignore unknown numbers, as my family tends to buy new phones to try to contact us, but this time she left a voicemail that sounded desperate. When I called back, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. It turns out Samuel got married last year to a woman named Rachel. None of us knew about it because we hadn't been in contact with that side of the family since the wedding incident. Apparently, Samuel met Rachel at church and their families had arranged the marriage pretty quickly. My mom was blabbering on about how everything was perfect, how Samuel had finally found a good Christian woman who understood him, and how they were all so happy until last week. Last Thursday, Rachel's coworker called the police after Rachel hadn't shown up for work for 3 days. When officers did a welfare check, they found Rachel with serious injuries. She had 2 broken ribs, a broken wrist, and bruises all over her body. But here's the part that really got to me. when the police started investigating, they discovered that my father had been helping Samuel cover up the abuse for months. Rachel finally broke down and told the police everything. Samuel had started beating her just 2 months after they got married. Every time she threatened to leave or tell anyone, my father would step in, using his real estate connections to pressure Rachel's family about their mortgage or threatening to fire her from her job at one of his friends' companies. He even convinced Rachel's parents that she was mentally unstable and making up stories about Samuel, using the same tactics they used on Victoria. The latest incident occurred because Rachel had gotten a promotion that would have given her financial independence. Samuel completely lost his temper and beat her so badly she couldn't go to work. When she called her dad for help, he told her to ice it and remember her wedding vows. That's when her coworker stepped in and called the police. Both Samuel and my dad were arrested. Samuel for domestic violence and my dad for witness intimidation and conspiracy. My mom wanted me to come back and help sort things out. She kept saying that the family needs to stick together in times of crisis, that Samuel and my dad needed my support, and that Rachel was obviously exaggerating, just like Victoria. I lost my temper. I told her how I really felt about her enabling Samuel's behavior his entire life. I reminded her of what they had done with Victoria, how they had chosen to support Samuel even after they had seen him attack her at Holly's wedding. I asked her if she had ever considered that if they had helped Samuel when he was younger, or held him accountable for his actions, maybe Rachel wouldn't be in the hospital now. Mom completely burst into tears, saying that she now realized they should have done something sooner. She admitted that she and Dad had always known Samuel was in trouble, but they thought they were protecting him by keeping it all a secret. Too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Holly called me later to give me some details. She had heard from the family. Apparently Rachel's parents were devastated and felt terrible for not believing her sooner. They were fully behind her, pressing charges against both Samuel and my father. The police were also investigating other potential victims, as several of Samuel's ex-girlfriends had come forward with similar stories of abuse and harassment. Victoria suggested that we contact Rachel through Holly to offer support if she needed it, which we probably would. Victoria noted that she had been lucky to have had support when dealing with Samuel, and Rachel might need someone who understood what she was going through. Some may think I'm cold towards my parents. But I've learned that enabling toxic behavior only leads to more victims. My family has had countless chances to change, but they refused. Now they can deal with the consequences of their choices without my help. My job is to protect my own family. My wife, our future daughter, and the peaceful life we've built away from their toxicity. Update 4. Many people have written to me asking for updates on this situation with Samuel, my dad, and Rachel, so here's what's happened in the last 6 months. First, the good news from my end. Victoria and I welcomed our daughter Emma 3 months ago. She's perfectly healthy and absolutely beautiful. Parenting has been amazing, and it has made us even more convinced that cutting ties with my toxic family was the right choice. Holly and her husband visited us last month to meet Emma, and watching them with her only reinforced what true family love looks like. Now for an update on Samuel and my dad's case. Holly has been keeping us updated, as she is still in contact with extended family. Samuel took a plea deal last month. He is getting 8 years in prison for aggravated domestic violence, with the possibility of parole in 5 years. My dad's case is still ongoing, but his lawyers are apparently trying to negotiate as well. His real estate license is suspended pending an investigation, and most of his business partners have cut ties with him. The most surprising development has been my mother. Since our last phone conversation, she has finally started therapy. According to Holly, she moved out of the marital home and filed for divorce from my father last week. She sent me a 12-page letter apologizing for everything, for enabling Samuel's behavior throughout his life, for not protecting me as a child, and especially for the way they treated Victoria. She admitted that she and my father essentially created the monster Samuel became by never holding him accountable. I have not yet responded to the letter. Part of me appreciates that she's finally facing reality, but it's too late. Where was that understanding when Samuel tortured animals as a child, or when he stalked Victoria, or when they saw him attack her at Holly's wedding? Victoria and I are discussing whether we can eventually let her visit Emma under supervision, but that will be many years from now, if it happens at all. Rachel has kept in touch with us through Holly. She's doing better. She's living with her sister in another state and is in intensive therapy. She's filed for divorce and is cooperating fully with prosecutors. According to Holly, several other women have come forward with allegations of abuse by Samuel in the past, including 2 from his church. The police are also investigating those cases. Rachel's parents have been incredibly supportive since the truth came out. They publicly apologized to her for not believing her sooner and cut all ties with my parents. They even work with domestic violence organizations to help other families recognize the signs of abuse and manipulation. The extended family is largely divided. Most of the younger relatives and cousins have sided with us and Rachel, while the older generation is still making excuses for Samuel and my dad. Holly's mom, my aunt, has started a family therapy group for relatives who want to understand how things went so wrong and how to do better for the next generation. As for Victoria and I, we are focused on our daughter and our life here. Victoria went back to work part-time last week and was promoted to director of pediatric nursing. I still work remotely, but may soon start my own software consulting business. We have built a wonderful community here with amazing friends and chosen family. Sometimes I think about reaching out to my mom or responding to her email, but then I look at Emma and think how my parents would expect me to let Samuel around her if we were still in touch, arguing that he deserved another chance. That thought alone confirms that we made the right decision to stay away. The cycle of abuse and indulgence in my family ends with my generation. Emma will grow up surrounded by healthy relationships and people who respect boundaries. Sometimes leaving a toxic family is the best thing you can do for your children, even if it hurts.